Welcome and good evening. This evening's program is going to have maybe some pretty graphic images on the screens. We just wanted to give you a heads up for that, so if you find something disturbing, I just encourage you to just close your eyes. But this story that we retell tonight indeed is a graphic and disturbing story. Our hope is that you will simply sensually experience what it must have been like from the Garden of Gethsemane and to the cross and beyond. And as we travel that road together, hopefully you'll just be able to reflect on the amazing love of God who would send his only begotten Son just for this purpose, for you and for me. As we did last night, we'll encourage you to just leave the service at the end reflectively and silently, and then spend some time between now and Sunday morning preparing your heart for the joy of resurrection.
Under the velvet canopy of the night sky, stars flicker faintly, their distant light unable to pierce the heaviness that looms over the garden. The ancient olive trees stand as silent witnesses, their twisted forms echoing the torment of the solitary figure who kneels among them. Jesus, the Son of Man, bows his head to the earth, his hands trembling as they clutch the soil. The air is thick with the scent of olive leaves and the impending storm of betrayal. He prays, the words falling from his lips like drops of rain before the deluge. Abba, Father. His voice is raw, both pleading and resigned. All things are possible for you. Take this cup from me, yet not what I will, but what you will. The weight of the cup before him, the suffering, the rejection, the sin of the world, is almost unbearable. His humanity trembles at the thought, and yet his divinity remains steadfast. The duality of his nature aches within him, a tension between sorrow and submission. Nearby, the disciples rest in uneasy slumber, their weariness betraying their resolve. The Son of Man, in his most vulnerable hour, is left alone. A shadow of anguish crosses his face as he rises to check on them, only to find their eyelids heavy with sleep. Could you not watch with me 1 hour, he asks, not with anger, but with a tender sorrow. Watch and pray, so that you will not fall into temptation. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. He returns to his place of prayer, the agony in his heart deepening. The weight of humanity and brokenness presses upon him, and his sweat, like great drops of blood, falls to the earth. The heavens seem silent, the Father distant, and yet his love for humankind burns brighter than ever in this dark hour. For a third time, he prays. A quiet resolve fills him. The trembling ceases, replaced by a calm born of divine purpose. He rises, his eyes steady and his heart set. In the distance, torches flicker and voices murmur. The betrayer approaches. Enough, he says to his disciples as they stir awake. The hour has come. The Son of Man is delivered into the hands of sinners. Rise, let us go. My betrayer is here. The rustling of leaves gives way to the clinking of metal. A crowd emerges, led by one he once called a friend. The kiss of betrayal seals his fate, and yet he does not resist. There is no anger, no fear, only love, unyielding and eternal. The garden, once a place of peace and reflection, now bears witness to the greatest act of submission and sacrifice the world will ever know. The weight of sin and salvation is carried forward into the night.
He was betrayed with a kiss by one of his disciples, a friend, or at least a pretend friend, named Judas Iscariot. Judas had spent 3 years with Jesus. 3 years. Jesus had commissioned him, fed him, loved him, taught him, cared for him, and invested in him. But Judas betrayed him for 30 pieces of silver. Sounds like a lot of money, right? But in reality, it was only enough money to buy a small field in that time. $30 pieces. Now, after Jesus was arrested, Peter followed him to the home of the high priests, but had to stay outside the gate until a woman opened it for him. As he entered, the woman asked Peter, "You're not one of the man's disciples, are you?" "No," he said, "I'm not that." Well, because it was cold, the household servants and the guards, they made a fire. They stood around it, warming themselves with it. And Peter stood there with them, warming himself. And once again, someone asked Peter, "You're not one of his disciples, are you?" He denied it once again, saying, No, I'm not him." Soon after, one of the slaves of the high priest asks, "Didn't I see you out there in the olive grove with Jesus?" And for the third time, Peter denied it. Jesus was then taken to Pilate, the Roman governor. "Are you the king of the Jews?" the governor asked. Jesus replied, "You have said it." But when the leading priests and the elders made their accusations against him, Jesus remained silent, much actually to the governor's surprise. Now, it was Pilate's custom each year during Passover to release one prisoner to the crowd, anyone that they wanted. This year, there was a notorious prisoner named Barabbas. As the crowds gathered before Pilate's house that morning, he asked them, "Which one of these men do you want me to release? Barabbas or Jesus? Which one? While he was asking that question, the leading priest and the elders persuaded the crowd to ask for Barabbas to be released and for Jesus to be put to death. So Pilate asked the crowd, "Then what should I do with him?"
Crucify him! Crucify him! Crucify him!
Why? Why? Pilate demanded. What has he done? Then Pilate sent for a bowl of water and washed his hands before the crowd, saying, "I am innocent of this man's blood." So with that, Pilate released Barabbas to the people. He ordered Jesus to be scourged, then turned him over to the Roman soldiers to be crucified.
Then the Bible says, they took him and had him scourged. Now, scourging was such that it almost always killed the victim. But Jesus was a young man and a strong man in his early 30s. He was in good physical condition. That could be why he didn't die from the scourging. They stripped Jesus nearly naked and shackled his hands over his head. Then soldiers stood on either side of him and whipped him brutally with what is called a flagrum, or a cat o' nine tails. It was a wooden handle that had long straps of leather protruding from it. At the end of each strap was a ball of either metal or stone, and that would tenderize the human flesh. Sometimes there were hooks at the end, usually made of metal. So the soldiers took turns doing their job, inflicting as much pain as possible on Jesus. At this point for Jesus, the process of death has begun. Jesus was forced to carry his cross to the place of death. The cross was an enormous wooden beam that you would use to secure a roof in an ancient home. And this was recycled timber. Other men had carried it to their own crucifixion. It was covered with their tears and their blood and their sweat. On the way, Jesus was so exhausted that he collapsed under the weight of the cross. Simon of Cyrene, a bystander, was commanded to help him carry the cross to the place of crucifixion. This carpenter, who himself had driven many nails, had the equivalent of railroad spikes driven through his hands and his feet. Jesus' cross was then lifted up and dropped into the ground, shaking his body violently. From the cross, Jesus cried out, my God, why hast thou forsaken me?" In that moment, something legal, something spiritual, something eternal happened. Jesus traded places with us. 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 21 says, "For God made Christ, who never sinned, to be the offering for our sin, so that we could be made right with God through Christ. Adam and Eve in the garden substituted themselves for God and introduced sin to mankind. But here, in this place, God substituted himself for us, defeating the power of sin. Then he cried out, "It is finished." His last words might have been hard to understand, but they were triumphant just the same. Salvation through him was available. It was finished.
Eli! Eli! Lama sabachthani!
Were you there when they crucified my Lord? Were you there when they crucified my Lord? Oh, sometimes it causes me to tremble, tremble, tremble. Were you there when they crucified my Lord? Were you there when they nailed him to the tree? Were you there when they nailed him to the tree? Oh, sometimes it causes me to tremble, tremble, tremble. Were you there when they nailed him to the tree? Were you there when they pierced him in the side? Were you there when they pierced him in the side? Oh, sometimes it causes me to tremble, tremble, tremble. Were you there when they pierced him in the side? Were